Hey guys, Jamie here. So today I just wanted to touch on a topic that I was kind of thinking about recently, and I'm just seeing, a lot online, especially in the world that we live in today. There's a lot of uh, darkness, you could say. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and when you know, you know. Like I don't have to say, uh, and people are dealing with a lot of hardships and addictions, you know because they're trying to cover up pain. A lot of people, there's a lot of pain in the world right now, and people are trying to cover up pain. And that makes sense. We don't really want to feel pain, it's uncomfortable. And so people are dealing with pain with all sorts of addictions, you know? And how do you know if you have an addiction? Well, if you try to go without something and you just can't, then you probably have, an addiction. I mean, there is varying degrees of it, but that could be anything. Addicted to shopping. Shopping can be a coping mechanism for people to deal with stress and pain with what's going on in their life, in the world. Obviously food's a huge one. Fast food addiction, processed food addiction. And the reason why that's so addictive, that food, is because they all come with fat and sugar together. And we've talked about this before. You eat foods with fat and sugar together, the brain wants glucose. And when you eat it with fat, that copious amounts of fat, it's blocking the sugar from getting into the cell. And you'll just want to keep eating and eating. If you notice that with things like cookies and stuff, you could just eat that whole box of cookies and not even really feel that full. So that's, part of that. And we also eat those foods for emotional reasons. It reminds us of, what we were fed as a child. It's comforting. There's emotional reasons behind it. And, but yeah, so food's a big one. Obviously drugs, whether it's illegal drugs or prescribed drugs. People like to just let that slide, but prescribed drugs, you think that they're all so safe and good for you, and maybe they're not. But yeah, so lots of addictions. Okay, smoking, marijuana, whatever. I hope I can say these words on YouTube. I really don't know. I'm a new YouTuber and a fairly new one. I don't really know what words, I know that there's words you can't say. I guess we'll find out. But so what I was just thinking about is, for one, addiction. Everyone has these addictions as coping mechanisms for what they're dealing with in their personal lives in this world right now. Lots of stress, lots of hardships, lots of trauma, okay, like PTSD. And it makes sense, we're all trying to avoid discomfort and pain because it's no fun. But it just made me think that we all have to, unfortunately, be able to have some tolerance of pain. We have to have some tolerance of discomfort, and we have to be okay with some suffering. And what I mean by that is, if you can't endure some suffering, just be alone in quiet, no distractions, and be faced with what it is that has happened to you in life or what's going on right now. If you can't face that, it's going to lead to bigger problems, addictions, and more suffering down the road. That's what's going to happen. And we need to be able to endure some pain and suffering, within reason. And, the context matters. But for an example, this is just an example. Let's just say you hurt yourself, not like a big injury, but let's just say you cut your finger really bad, really bad. And you could either just deal with that pain, or you could take over-the-counter pain meds, which seem pretty harmless. They seem harmless to most people. You don't really know what's in them. But that one little thing, that one little incident with you cutting your hand that seems so innocent, I'm just going to take these over the counter, pain meds, then what if that leads to something bigger? Like now every time you hurt yourself, you injure your leg, your knee, you're like, oh, it's okay, I got these Advil, these Aleve, I'm just gonna pop two, I'm just gonna pop two more. You don't realize how sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, that can lead to something worse. And the level of pain you're dealing with does matter. Context matters, but we've heard plenty of stories where people end up on opioids. A person who never done drugs before in their life, straight and narrow, and they get into like some sort of situation, whatever it is. Maybe it's an accident. It could be a very severe accident. That's why I said context matters, because some pain is so horrible. Like, you don't know what people would do. But the thing is that some of these people then end up on opioids, and then years later they're completely addicted to opioids. Their life has gone to shit, and in some cases they may do something terrible to themselves. And so this is just an example of how this avoidance of pain can lead to something so much worse. Okay. And just so, and then just like any personal struggles, it's like sometimes we just have to be faced with it. There's no other choice. You just have to be faced with, your pain and endure some suffering. Maybe it's mentally, maybe it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is. Sometimes we just have to be able to endure some level of suffering, and we will get through it. Like when you're in pain in a moment, it seems all encompassing, like life could never be better or this will never be fixed. But that's not true. Like nothing stays the same in life. I don't know if you've noticed, but nothing stays the same. Everything is constantly changing. There's ups, there's downs. Like you can't have the good without the bad. You can't have pain and suffering without like happiness or joy. That's life. There's ebbs and flows, and we just need to be able to endure some level of discomfort and suffering or pain, because if we can't, then it could end up being so much worse. And the thing is that pain and suffering can teach you something. Something really good could come out of it. I've experienced that myself, or something like such a dark time, so dark that you never think that you could get out of. You just stay the course, and you got to do the right things. Like you just got to do what is good for you, instead of taking drugs or alcohol, or like addictions with food or shopping or whatever. You just have to do the right things. Get out in nature, go for a walk, reflect, sit in stillness with that discomfort, whatever it is, with that pain. And you will see that in time, it will pass. And, it's better if we face it. Because if you face it, it's like the body just can let it go. And then you move on. And then you are like, your life becomes slightly like more elevated. Okay. And then you become more grateful and appreciative of when you feel good and when things are going right, So yeah, I'm seeing a lot of suffering in the world right now, and obviously this is going to come back to carbohydrates, because carbohydrates, this is what we run on. Okay, we run on glucose. This is what the brain, every cell in the body runs on. And when you feed your body what it's designed to eat, and in enough amount, like quantity, like enough calories, because we don't calorie restrict here. That's the worst thing to do. The worst thing to do if you are suffering with pain, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. The worst thing you can do is restrict your calories and restrict your carbohydrate calories. Okay, the worst thing you can do. But you will see that if you are going through maybe a dark time, or you're in some sort of spiritual pain, mental pain, physical pain, if you start to eat lots of fruit and lots of carbohydrates, honey, potatoes, in the absence of fat, you will be blown away as to how things change for you. okay? Pain starts to go away, physical pain, you know, mental pain, spiritual pain. Things start to get, like when it comes to spiritual pain and emotional pain, like things will start to get, you'll be faced with it, but things will start to get released out of your cells, is how I feel. And you will be like, it will feel like a weight has been lifted, okay? Carbohydrates are so important when it comes to any sort of suffering and pain. And a lot of people have addictions because they are restricting carbohydrates, okay? They go to things like alcohol and fast food and, you know, whatever it is, like caffeine, chocolate. They go to these foods because they are restricting carbohydrates, okay? And it's like what's happening is the brain wants the glucose, the cells want the glucose, but you're restricting it. You're eating processed foods with fat and sugar together. The fat is blocking the sugar from getting into the cell. So what's happening is when you eat things like high fat, alcohol, or caffeine, chocolate, adrenaline is released, okay? Same with adrenaline's released when you go shopping. You know, you get like a dopamine hit. When you jump out of an airplane, you know, people are addicted to these things because they release adrenaline. So you're replacing the sugar with adrenaline, okay? But all you really need is just the sugar. You need the glucose, okay? And it's just using adrenaline as a replacement. And that only works for so long, okay? It only works for so long because eventually you will like wear out your adrenals. And yeah, that's a place you don't want to be. So yeah, I was just thinking about this. I hope that all makes sense. Sometimes I have, you know, I'm just thinking about things and I understand, you know, like when I'm thinking in my head and it makes sense to me, but sometimes you don't know how it comes across when you're saying it out loud. But yeah, so the whole point is, guys, is that we do need to be able to endure some suffering and some pain, because if you can't and you try to cover it up with whatever, you won't heal. There will be no true healing there. There'll just be avoidance and greater suffering down the road, more pain. So we just need to stop trying to avoid everything that's uncomfortable. You know, a lot of people won't work out because they're just like, oh, it's uncomfortable. Well, that's how it is in the beginning. But my God, once you start working out and you have the energy for it by eating carbohydrates, like I said, the carbs is what's going to give you energy. Carbs is what's going to give you motivation to want to get up and move your body and not sit down for like a second. I don't want to sit down at all during the day. Like I don't want to do that until really late at night. I want to work out. I love how it feels. I love the burn. Like I love the burn. I love the discomfort because, you know, there's a lot of growth in discomfort and some, you know, pain and suffering. And if you try to avoid that your whole life, you're not going to have growth. You're not going to heal. And there's going to be greater suffering and more pain. And you're not going to live life to like your fullest potential. So yeah, but yeah, hopefully that all made sense. But yeah, so that's my video for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll be back again for another video. Thanks, guys. Bye.